Welcome to the Real Estate Magically podcast, where we'll delve into the latest real estate insights and trends. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time buyer, our podcast is here to provide valuable information and expert advice. This episode is powered by Bayut, the leading property platform in the UAE and proud member of the Dubizzle Group. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting, Bayut connects you with real estate options that meet your needs using innovative tools like TrueCheck and Bayut GPT. Whether you're looking for a new home or a reliable platform to advertise your listings, choose Bayut, where you'll find real photos, real prices, and real properties.
Welcome to Real Estate Majlis. Today with us we have Mr. Greg Lewis, who's the Managing Director of AirDXB.
Good morning.
Good morning, and great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cecilia and myself having a few questions for you on short lease.
Okay.
So, and what is it that people should know about short-term lease in terms of their rights, their expectations, what they should be aware of, what they should be paying attention to?
God, that's a question with many answers. Yeah. I think. Look, we can stick to three key points to answer that question. Know the legalities. That's the first thing I would suggest. So understand how this all works, understand the permits, understand the taxes that you need to collect, all this sort of thing. We're governed by the DTCM, the Dubai Tourism, Commerce and Marketing Department, which is under the DET. Very efficient. What I love about them is that everything is clear and straightforward. It's if you look at the West, for argument's sake, it's a very grey area. Nobody really knows what they can or can't do. Is there a rule? Isn't there a rule? What Dubai have laid out is a very simple guideline of what needs to be done. And as long as you follow that, you'll be fine. I think the second thing is you need to make sure that you are getting the right management company. And of course, I'm going to say AirDXB is the right management company, but you need to make sure that they're doing things in the right way, that they're not being lazy, they're not just relying upon computer software, because how does computer software, for argument's sake, on pricing, know the difference between a one-bedroom in a tower, what the different type of furnishing would be, or what the view would be, or these sorts of things. So you need to make sure you're with a company that understands how this all works, understands that certain pricing should be done at certain points of time. Now, that's just one part of it, the pricing. There's lots of other things. There's guest care, there's ownership care, there's statistical analysis, there's all of this sort of stuff that you need to understand and obviously help the client to understand what they need to do. Then you also need to work with a company that can advise you on how best to present your unit. So make sure you get the interiors right. I've said this before and I'll say it again. That term that we've all heard, a picture speaks 1,000 words, and what we do, a picture speaks 1,000,000 words. We have had as a company over 120 different nationalities. These people are in Brazil, these people are in Australia, these people could be anywhere around the world. I'd like to think that they read the descriptions, they don't. They look at the pretty pictures. So you need to make sure that that property is presented at the highest possible way to make sure that you are attracting that person to get the right booking at the right rate.
And a lot of people that are investing in buying property with the purpose for Airbnb, you obviously talk to people, and I get a lot of different feedback in terms of what to buy. I mean, naturally, I would think a studio one bedroom, because the rate will be cheaper, will give you an access to a bigger amount of people. But in reality, I get the information I know, the bigger units, they have a better ROI. So what people should consider if they are specifically buying property today in Dubai, in terms of the best possible return that they can get?
Okay, so if we wind the clock back pre-pandemic, I mean, I've set the business up 6-7 years ago, so no one really understood what holiday lets or short lets actually were. And if you look at what the property purchase price was, it was very different to now. So when you look at your rate of return, it's all about what you're actually purchasing it for. So yes, you would say Dubai Marina, JBR, downtown, Palm Jumeirah, they are the best areas. Of course they are. You're also paying the highest price for them. So that is going to naturally affect your rate of return. Now, the market's actually changed in the sense that places like JVC, Sports City, Alpha Jan, these sorts of locations, the prices, and I know they are at the moment, but they have not picked up at the same velocity as those more prime areas. So your rate of return is actually far higher. So if you wind the clock back to even 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, pandemic and just post-pandemic, I would have said, well, anything is fair game. Now this market has moved on. You need to be a little bit careful on what you're purchasing because these purchase prices are so high. But the obvious one is to say a one bedroom. That's what majority of the markets, this is the guest, want. However, that's got the most or highest volume of property available. So yes, it's a good idea to buy that, but make sure that you're buying the right type of property. Studio, great property to get into because it's a low purchase price. However, notoriously the most difficult to rent when the market gets tough. Summer or COVID or COVID in the past. But if anything like that happens, people will naturally look for something because the prices drop. They can then afford the one bedroom.
Bigger.
So, exactly. So when the market drops down, be that summer or something like COVID happens, people can rates drop, so people can naturally afford more. So those that can afford a studio can now afford a one bed, and that then moves up. But the market, I still think, is relatively untapped are larger units, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, family units. When you look at a family, let's say it's parents and they've got 3 children, 4 children, they need 2 to 3 hotel rooms. Each hotel room is 1,000 dirhams a night, it's 3,000 dirhams. You could rent a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment in JBR for half that, but you have all the facilities, you have a far higher square footage, you have the kitchen facilities, you have things like this. So a great market to get into is that is more bedrooms, because you're opening it into a different market, and what I believe is a growing market, and you're coming out of that more saturated market, which is the studios, one bedders, which is naturally an investor buy and move on.
But then one would argue that it's expensive, obviously, to buy. And what I've been witnessing over the last few months is a lot of people actually subleasing units for Airbnb purpose. Obviously, there are legalities with that. It is allowed as long as the landlord signs an NOC that is fully aware that there will be a subleasing and an Airbnb practice on the unit. However, do you think this is a recommendation strategy from a budget perspective?
No.
Okay.
No. I would have done this pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, all before rents have gone up. Because, perfect example, Palm Views on the Palm Jumeirah. I was subleasing property and renting it out, but I was renting it for 45,000 dirhams a year, and I was leasing it for 110. Right. Subleasing it. Right. Look at that.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Beautiful, yeah.
And we grew and grew and grew. What are those units now? 80? 90?
So the margins are not there anymore.
There isn't a margin anymore, because by the time you paid for your DWAs and furnished the property and things like this, it doesn't exist. Now, I know it seems to, it picked up for us about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. A lot of people wanted to get into it. It dropped off. And now all of a sudden it's picked back up again. You look at these figures and I don't understand how people can actually make money from it anymore. Yes, it's a good idea if you find the right property at the right price, but that means now heading out to your JVCs and things like this. But the biggest thing is with this is you have an overhead. You have to pay that rent. So you need to make sure that what you're bringing in is
cash flow,
exactly not
well organized,
it, exactly. But then you are actually making a profit on it. And we've seen people come, try it for a year, and actually walk away from it. And as I said, I personally did it, but I walked away from it about 2 years ago. So I would always say, do your due diligence. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure the market rent you're paying and the return that you're making is significant. Personally, I wouldn't go anywhere near it unless you're making 20% net return minimum, because of what different things can affect during that tenancy. It might be you have to do some stuff to the furniture or upgrade, or some maintenance happens or something like this. So if you come any lower than that, I would be careful. I would be careful. I do know several people, though, that have gone and taken out 2 or 3 year leases on fixed leases. Yes, good and bad. Good in the sense that you fix that rent, bad in the sense that if you don't make the desired returns, you're still locked into a lease for 3 years. Yeah. So I personally wouldn't. And I think you don't hear that much these days, because a lot of people have naturally assumed it's a good idea. It was a good idea. But here now today, I'd be very, very careful doing it. So
people need to be careful with the hype on the subleasing.
Very careful. Very, very careful, and make sure, of course, then you've got to start looking at from the RERA calculator perspective. As we know, that's changed recently. So if you do take on a lease and then next year that's put up 5-10%, that's 5-10% of your profit margin gone. Yeah, and as I said, I think even 20% is not enough. You need to be 20, 30, 40% to really make sure this is worthwhile.
Greg, you mentioned the increase in rental in Dubai in the last maybe year or so, and now maybe the short let becoming less interesting as it used to be when the rent was much lower. So in terms of options now available for owners and protection and risk, how do you see that the balance between them? Like, should I take one long-term lease, fixed amount, no headache, or it's still worth going through a short
As a
term.
landlord, yeah.
Yeah, as a landlord.
Yes.
I'm naturally going to say a short let all the way because I own and run AirDXB and it's a short let company. But it depends on personal circumstances. If you're looking to sell, and who knows what this market's going to do, it's been going up now for almost 3 years. How much more steam is left in that engine to keep pushing prices up? I am speaking, we have a lot of investors that have bought purely to sell at a profit, but they're just waiting for their time to sell. If you go into the short let market, when you choose to sell, best property you can have because it's vacant. So your investors, your end users, all these different types of buyers, your property appeals to. The minute a long-term tenant goes in, it's just an investor because they then have to wait for that tenant to leave. Then you have to serve the correct notice. That then itself becomes a very big headache. You're then talking about a lot of money because if you then can't sell it and the market starts dropping, for argument's sake, 10%, and you've just purchased a property at 2 million, that's 200,000 dirhams down. Why would you gamble that? Keep that property. Keep in control of that property. Control. Especially in this market, we know there's a bit of unrest in the region as well. So I think you've got to have an eye on that just to make sure that you are in control of that asset to move it in whatever direction that you want. We also have people who actually have it as a holiday home. So they come into Dubai 1, 2, 3 months a year, and the rest of the time it's sat empty. So that market obviously is very, very strong for us. I think from a long-term perspective, it all depends on who and what you're trying to achieve. Yes, though, yes, you can still make a lot more money in short term as opposed to long-term leasing. However, those 40, 50% margins are now decreasing because, of course, long-term's gone up. Again, wind the clock back 3, 4, 5 years ago. Yeah. In some cases, we were making double. In one case, I was making 130% more than long-term for clients.
Wow, 130%.
Yeah, I mean, phenomenal. And these were in places like JVT. They were one bedders and they were getting 30 grand. We were making 110, 120. I mean, just huge amounts of money. So what I would strongly suggest is that if you are thinking to do this, is what is your end goal? What are you trying to achieve? And if you want to retain control because of what your position could change in the future, short term's the thing to do. But as I've commented earlier in this, is these areas, prime areas like the Dubai Marina, like the Palm Jumeirah, the long-term rents, not only the sales prices, but the long-term rents have also gone up. So the magnificent returns of 40% more than long-term, in some cases don't exist, in some cases do. Whereas before, 3, 4 years ago, you were doing that. So I think as an investor, you need to really look at what you're trying to achieve. And if this market does turn, prices start dropping, are you going to retain the unit or do you want to sell it? The majority of ours will want to sell it.
But Greg, can you tell us the roadmap? Where would you buy right now?
Where would I buy?
Yeah.
I would
for subleasing, obviously.
To then short-term let. Yeah. Whatever offers the highest return. Very obvious statement to make. But if we break this down, if we look at Dubai Marina, downtown Palm Jumeirah, these fantastic areas that everybody was very interested in, they are showing the slowest growth in capital. I.e. prices going up because they've shot up so much. You're actually seeing transaction volume dropping. Now, what you've seen is that all the investors jump into this because, as we know, property was incredibly cheap, and it was. And now prices have come up in those particular areas, prime areas. Everyone's now moving out to the next deal. The next deal is now your JVC Sports City. So it's going almost from Sheikh Zayed and then moving back to Al
Zone 2,
and then we'll go back, exactly, and it will start moving itself back. We've got quite a few investors. I myself have done it. I've bought in JVC. This was pre everybody rushing to it 9 months ago, but places like JVC is still showing a phenomenal return. Really? Because the purchase, the purchase price is some figures, loose figures. Of course, it depends where you buy, but you can buy a studio now for, let's say, 400,000, 450,000. Your return, your gross return will be about 80. Okay. So your net return will be around 60.
Oh, that's
55, 60. So you're still talking a 15% return. You talk about Dubai Marina, your purchase a 1 bedroom, let's say, for 1.5 million. Your return will be around 8% on short let. So significantly more. And I still feel if you go to your JVC, Sports City, these sorts of locations, there's still more growth in the actual value of the property. So you've got to look at your capital growth as well. Yeah. So I would be looking, exactly.
That's the win.
That's it. I would be looking going into the desert now. But what I'd also have my eyes on is locations towards the expo in general. So of course you've got things like the metro going in there, and of course you've got new developments coming up there, Palm Jebel Ali, etc.
That's a good hint. I am a big believer in that part of Dubai.
Really?
Yeah. And there's so much potential in that part of Dubai. So I
could
definitely
not agree more. Expo as well as a development that's going to come online once they redevelop that and add the residential. phenomenal. I think it would be the best place to live, personally.
The question on the transparency of fees, the relationship between management company and owners, this is the tricky question. How transparent this can be and how protected the landlord can be in the relationship with a management company. Especially a lot of owners don't live in the country, non-resident. So how is that managed?
We're very unique. In fact, I don't know of any other company around the world that does this, but we actually have owners paid directly by Airbnb. So we don't actually touch the client's money.
Wow, that's important.
Yeah, very important. This is something very unique that we have. So to break it down very, very quickly, the guest would book, he pays, let's say 100 dirhams. Keep numbers incredibly simple. Airbnb will take their fee. They then send us our fee from that 100 dirhams directly. And then the remaining amount gets sent directly to the owner's bank account of choice. So it keeps it very transparent, very slick, very straightforward and very quick. And they get paid, or the money is released within 2 working days after the guest checks in. So from that perspective, from our perspective, that is a very, very clean and transparent way to do this. I can't speak on behalf of other companies, but I think majority of them will take all the money and then distribute the money at the end of each month. I think you've just obviously got to make sure that you're checking summaries and things like this, that you are being paid what you should be being paid. But another thing that we do at AirDXB is we actually send the booking confirmation from the booking platforms to the owners, so they can see exactly what they're being paid, and that then comes from the source. So things like this, you've just got to consider as a homeowner, that when you do approach a company, to make sure that what they are offering is correct and what they are telling you is correct. But I looked at this, and this was something I did when I put the company business plan together, which was 6-7 years ago, was going to the 3 major factors of what is wrong within the market at the time. Transparency was a big one. So I said, right, how do we get this right? Let's just get the owners paid directly by source. And then there you go. And that's how we've done it.
There are companies in Dubai that they don't disclose all the bookings. So they pay customers partial payments. And this is a big problem.
I've had clients come to me and tell me some stories of, I was told no one was in the property and I know somebody was in. I was told that they only got me 500 dirhams. Well, actually they got me 800 dirhams. You see all these problems, but this is why we've taken such a step forward and saying, here's the booking confirmation from the booking platform and they're going to pay you directly.
How much is that cut? If I may ask, how much goes to Airbnb? How much goes to management companies roughly out of the revenues?
Airbnb have actually just put their fees up. They've just put them up by 2% very, very recently. If you're a guest, if you don't pay in the same currency of the country you're traveling to, additional 2%. So more money going up to their out these booking platforms. They're around 19% from the total booking. Yeah. They charge around 19%. We as a managing agent, we're charging 16.75, including that.
It's a lot of fees, but again, the return is still very good if it's properly managed.
And who pays the utilities? Sorry,
pays utilities, the owner.
The owner.
The owner.
Okay, so you as an owner expect almost 40% to goes to the Airbnb and the management company, and from the 60% you cover your utilities, right? Is that true? Okay.
That's right. Okay. Give or take, yeah. Okay. That's correct. That's then of the booking amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but then it does vary. People like Booking.com, they charge up to 20%. And then you have various other platforms which can charge anything between 15 and 20. But to give you a generalization, 15 to 20 for a booking platform. And as a managing agent, we're 16.75. There are other managing agents out there that charge up to 20 as well. So yeah, there's an amount of money that's definitely being paid out. But there's a big service, there's a big machine that obviously goes on to source guests.
In terms of eviction, how easy is it to evict someone in a short let as opposed to a long term where you go through RDC? I know you don't go through rental dispute center in such cases. It's maybe Dubai courts, right? If there is any case. But does it happen to start with? And how easy is it to evict?
I'm glad there's some wood in front of us, because I'm going to say, touch wood, this has never happened to us. We've never had anybody not vacate. We've had people say, I don't want to vacate, and then we will contact the local authorities, the police, and they move out pretty quickly. But we haven't had anyone that has never not moved out and caused the problems. Speaking to our legal counsel, we would then have to go through the channels of Dubai courts, but we've never had to do it. And touch wood, we never have to do that.
But whose liability is this to do this work? It becomes a landlord problem or the property management company?
It would become, I believe, but I believe, and this is not a fact, it would become the landlord, because the landlord is the owner. So the owner's responsibility, it's the owner's name on the title deed. We as a management company do everything to help and facilitate and do whatever's needed But at the end of the day, if a court action has to be taken forward, it will be taken forward by the owner.
Okay. But in terms of the management of, let's say, I'm an investor, I got one unit. Is it worth giving to a property management company, or I can do by myself? Or, you would recommend using a management company when you have more than 2-3 assets in different locations? Because it's very time consuming, and I cannot even imagine the time to open the door, close the door, clean, fix, something's not working, calling. So it's, it's a lot of hassle.
It's a lot. I've been in real estate now since 2000 in the UK, and here I'm predominantly spent my career in selling country homes, big expensive country homes in the UK, then in Dubai. But I did set up 2 holiday homes companies back in the UK for my boss at the time. I was 20 and 22, and he sold them. So that was great for him, bad for me because I was doing all the legwork for him to make the money. But anyway, I was working for him at the time.
It's part of the learning curve, right?
It's a learning curve. Well, this is what I'm doing it now. So I've been in many disciplines. So from commercial, general brokerage, dealing with rather expensive property as well. This is by far the hardest because there are so many moving parts.
Yes.
You have 4 different bodies that you're effectively operating under or with. So you have your booking platforms, you have your owners, you have your guests, and of course you have the local authority. So there's 4 different people or sectors, should we say, that you need to appease and keep happy and keep moving and working with. And so that alone is a hell of a manpower behind me. AirDXB are well over 200 employees now. You have your cleaning teams, you have your staff teams, maintenance teams.
And this is all part of your fees, by the way?
All part of our fees.
Okay, so that's not on top.
Exactly. You have guest relations. These teams, maintenance is 30, cleaners are 50, 60, guest relations is 10. These are almost companies within the company. Right. They're treated that way because you're running at such a pace. We're having 60, 70, 80 to 100 check-ins a day. So there's a lot of moving parts that goes on behind it. Now, there's a difference between a perfect world and the real world, and I use that a lot in the company. In a perfect world, what you want to happen happens, but it doesn't happen in what we do. You can give very clear directions of how someone to check in, and they still can get it wrong. You can have people come in and unfortunately break things in the apartments. This is talking about the guests now. You then have homeowners where you're giving continuous statistics, research reports, things like that. There's a lot of moving parts that happen with this. Now, if you want to do it yourself, and we know several people that do, I have done it myself and I get it, you just need to be committed. And of course,
you have to have time.
You need to be committed with it.
Right.
But if everything, going back to my point here, if everything ran exactly as you wanted it to, do it yourself. But it never ever does. There are so many different things that will happen. Like for argument's sake, the weather that we've experienced, there's a lot of people that either couldn't get to the apartment, couldn't leave the apartment because they couldn't get to where they were going to next. All these different things can happen. And you just need to make sure you've got the right team in the right place to deal with that. That's when a management company comes into its own, is because this isn't a perfect world. And because things don't go as you want it to. And the management company are there to help and support to get that through. If you're dealing with one unit, if you're an individual that has 10 or 15 or 20, yes, you've got a lot of moving parts, cleaners and things like this. So I'd always suggest get a management company to do it. Sorry, get my words out.
Final question, Mahmoud.
Yeah.
A piece of advice for landlords who want to make a decision and go ahead with the short-term rent.
To give them piece of advice.
Yeah. To give them a piece of advice, instruct AirDXB. There you go. A piece of advice to instruct AirDXB. Don't just run for the money. Funny thing to say. I've had it time and time again where some owners have said, I'm just going to go to long term because I can make an extra bit of money here. You're talking 10,000 dirhams more. This is in today's market in some locations. I'm not talking across the board. They've run into it and they've picked up the phone and gone, why have I done this? Either checks have bounced, they haven't moved out. I've got a buyer who wants to buy it, but the tenant won't let them interview it. There's all of this that happens. This market is ever moving, especially in Dubai, as we know, it's moving so quickly. Forward plan. That's what I'm saying to all my owners now. What do you want to do? Where are you in 2 years with your asset? What are you going to be doing with it? Are you going to be leaving it in your will to your children, or are you looking to flip it, as a lot of people are, a majority I think of people are? Then why are you going then into something like long term to lose control? Retain control so that you can do what you want to do at a moment's notice. And at AirDXB, it's only a 30-day notice with us. So if people choose to sell, they just sell it and away they go. So the advice I would give is forward plan. Make sure, look at what you're trying to achieve in the next 2 years. And if something like the short let model works because it's giving you that control, then move forward with short let.
Greg, thank you so much for participating on the Real Estate Majlis podcast. It was really good. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Very
you.
informative.
Thank you.